This one. We have Oklahomans, Texans, Californians, etc. by the bundle. All great people and full of enthusiasm.
McMahon becomes an oil baron and builds the first large gas pipeline in Canada. Canadian resources and American capital fuel an economic boom that seemed unthinkable just a decade earlier. Massive developments will change the Canadian landscape. The Camano Power Project in the northwestern corner of British Columbia is described as the eighth wonder of the world. The American magazine National Geographic gushes over its awesome revision of geography.
The Canadians dammed a river, ran it backwards through a mountain, dropped it down a man-made waterfall 16 times higher than Niagara, and then released it into the Pacific.
Buried deep within a mountain, the plant is designed to withstand nuclear attack. It powers the largest aluminum smelter in North America. A town called Kitimat is created in the British Columbia wilderness. Art Weens and his wife Pat arrived from Vancouver to work at the massive smelter.
The first morning, I took my bright new shining aluminum lunch bucket and put it under my arm. My wife saw me to the door. I kissed her, and then looked down Quail Street, and all down the street this was being repeated. Everyone had an identical house, an identical lunch bucket, and I'll swear, an identical wife.
But prosperity has its price. The dam floods over 350 square miles. It erases the traditional territory of the Cheslata people. Hunting and fishing lands, even burial grounds, vanish. Marvin Charlie is 8 years old when the water takes his home.
It was a nightmare for the people when they were asked to move immediately. The snow was pretty deep. Some of them took wagons and some of the boys took horses, so the traveling was very slow.
The evacuation is so sudden that those out on trap lines return to find their homes burned, destroyed, and flooded. As water from the dam tears apart the earth, the Cheslata discover, to their horror, the wooden coffins of their ancestors floating on top of the lake.
When we found the graves had been washed down the river, the people began walking the riverbanks, looking for their loved ones' graves they had lost.
40 years later, Marvin Charlie is chief of the Cheslata. They insist the signatures on the documents giving up the land were forged by federal government officials. Marvin Charlie negotiates $7 million in compensation for the forced removal. The decade after the war has brought prosperity to Canada, but not freedom from fear. The funeral train for former Prime Minister Mackenzie King leaves Toronto's Union Station. On board are Prime Minister Louis Saint-Laurent and the new Minister for External Affairs, Lester Pearson. The son of a small-town Ontario clergyman, Pearson has had a brilliant diplomatic career. Now he believes Canada should use its post-war stature to be an independent voice for international peace and goodwill.
We should promote the economic well-being of peoples and achieve social justice, thereby creating an overwhelming superiority of moral, material, and military force on the side of peace and progress.
The chill in the wartime alliance of capitalism and communism has hardened into a dangerous rift. As the Cold War locks Canada into the American orbit, Pearson's dream is threatened. Canada helps create a new military alliance, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. Pearson ensures the treaty includes social and economic aims, but the acerbic American Secretary of State Dean Acheson has little time for Pearson's idealism.
If you think that we are going to start all over again, especially with you moralistic, interfering Canadians, then you're crazy.
In 1950, a war in Korea tests the limits of Canada's influence. The communist North has invaded South Korea. The United Nations sends in troops under American command, including 27,000 Canadians. When the North Koreans are driven back, Pearson calls for a ceasefire. But he is brushed aside by the Americans who want to continue the war and crush the threat of communism. In a speech at the Empire Club in Toronto, Pearson betrays his frustration.
The days of relatively easy and automatic political relations with our neighbor are, I think, over. While we are most anxious to work with the United States and support her in the leadership she is giving to the free world, we are not willing to be merely an echo.
The United States expresses official concern over the remarks. Pearson's relationship with the Americans will never be the same.
The committee will come to order.
The Cold War is fought on many fronts. In the United States, Senator Joseph McCarthy's accusations destroy careers and ruin lives. The Red Scare is taking hold in Canada as well.
Everywhere are evidences of the continuous underground cancerous movements of communism. Only eternal vigilance can protect us against communism and its infiltration into our way of life.
In Quebec, the padlock law allows police red squads to seal off any property where communist literature or activity is suspected. Danielle Dion is a Montreal wife and mother. She is also a communist.
When I saw 5 strapping provincial police enter my home, I experienced an instinctive moment of fear, but I quickly realized that there was nothing I could do but remain silent. They rummaged through drawers and bookcases, removing all the books. We had to change apartments a few times because of the raids.
Ottawa proceeds more discreetly. The RCMP quietly investigates tens of thousands of Canadians annually, seeking out political or sexual nonconformity. A Maclean's magazine columnist writes,
If a housewife in Ottawa hears a knock on her door, it can be one of only 2 people, the milkman or the RCMP.
In Ottawa, Pearson worries Canada is following in American footsteps.
Let us by all means remove the traitors from positions of trust. But in doing so, I hope we may never succumb to the black madness of the witch hunt.
When Pearson refuses to cooperate with America's anti-communist crusade, the powerful head of the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, responds angrily to this impertinence.
Let me have a memo on what our files show on Pearson. Pearson had better stop mouthing his half-truths as they pertain to the FBI.
The FBI file on Pearson contains 243 pages and is labeled Espionage, Russian. An American newspaper calls him the most dangerous man in the English-speaking world. In October 1952, that most dangerous man is elected president of the UN General Assembly. But the American witch hunt will return for Lester Pearson. In 1949, Frank Colantonio arrives in Toronto with a cardboard suitcase. He stands in awe of a train station so massive it reminds him of a medieval cathedral. The 27-year-old farmer has left his southern Italian village to earn his living as a laborer in Canada. In the evening, he secures his future by learning English at a local public school.
I sometimes found it uncomfortable, sitting there in a classroom with grade 2 art projects decorating the walls and King George VI staring down at us. The chairs were designed for 8-year-olds, not for burly men just fresh from their jobs as hod carriers and carpenters. But it was the first step in learning a language that would eventually be almost everything to me in my working life.
Frank Colantonio is one of 120,000 Italians who will settle in Toronto over the next 15 years. Many find jobs in the city's booming construction industry.
Things were in a state of frenzied expansion. New subdivisions around the city fringes were being thrown up at a breathtaking pace. The pressure to produce was unbelievable.
Using new assembly line techniques, houses that took months to build now take days. But workers like Frank Colantonio pay the price.
Time-consuming and costly safety measures took a backseat to production, as workers routinely took chances with their lives. Anyone who objected could be easily replaced, and the fear of deportation always festered in the background.
By the mid-50s, Toronto is the fastest growing city on the continent. On September 14th, 1956, Frank and Irene Camiso and their 2 daughters are welcomed to their new home in Scarborough's Wishing Well Acres. It is the official celebration of the millionth house built in Canada since the end of the war. The Camisos are delighted with their new 3-bedroom bungalow.
Everything was just about the way we wanted it. Conventional layout, 6 rooms, and a wonderful heating system. Hot water on oil. No more coal shoveling.
Like many families, the Camisos leave the city for the suburbs. And, like many young mothers, Irene stays at home. After the war, women are not allowed to continue in their wartime jobs. Daycare centers are closed. They are branded a communist attempt to undermine the Canadian family. School boards and the Federal Civil Service will not hire married women. Some provincial governments fire any woman who is married.
province de Québec a pourvu à l'établissement d'écoles ménagères spécialisées.
In Quebec, church-run Instituts Familiaux promote conservative traditions and try to produce the ideal wife.
Vider une volaille. Voilà le cauchemar de bien des jeunes mariés, mais pas ceux l'élève de l'école ménagère. Voyez comme l'opération paraît facile et même amusante quand on sait s'y prendre.
But women continue to work outside the home. Many have to if their families want a share of the post-war boom, a boom fed by a flood of products coming from south of the border. Winnipeg teenager Melinda McCracken is dazzled by the arrival of Ellet's, an American-style soda fountain.
America appeared to be the source of all good things. Things that were magical and ingenious and fun. Cokes, 13-inch hot dogs, sodas and milkshakes, soft ice cream, chocolate bars, comic books, Hollywood movies.
But on September 6th, 1952, Canadians see themselves in a whole new way.
Good evening. This is Lorne Green. This week, our cameramen all over the world went to get the news where and when it was happening.
Canada's first television network, the publicly funded Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, goes on the air.
Got my dance boots on, got my Sunday best, going to the barn dance tonight.
Variety shows like Don Messer's Jubilee. And drama series like The Plouffe Family celebrate the country's talent and diversity. For the first time, Canadians see their own country reflected back to them on television. But most of the drama and entertainment shows the CBC carries and English Canadians watch are American. Canada is pulled ever closer to her giant neighbor. By 1953, the United States and the Soviet Union both have the ultimate weapon of destruction. As the Cold War grows ever more dangerous, Canada struggles to maintain its independence. To warn of Soviet bombing attacks, the United States sets up chains of radar stations across Canada's far north. The growing American military presence on Canadian soil raises concerns. Prime Minister Louis Saint-Laurent warns Canadians.
We must leave no doubt about our active occupation and exercise of our sovereignty of these northern lands right up to the pole.
The far north is virtually uninhabited, but that is about to change. Families from Inuit communities on Hudson Bay find themselves part of a government experiment. Simeone Amagwalik is one of them.
They told us we had to leave. When the Kalunat or white men spoke, we were afraid of them. The white man was all-powerful, next to God, actually, and you don't argue with him.
They are taken on a 6-week journey to Ellesmere and Cornwallis Islands, far above the Arctic Circle. The government wants to lessen their dependence on government relief and establish a presence in the far north. They arrive at a land known as the Arctic Desert, a land so harsh it was abandoned by the Inuit centuries ago. Now it is their home. Left with only tents and a few provisions, they must survive. Many are ill with tuberculosis. There are no schools, no medical care. John Amagwalek is 5 years old when his family is moved.
We spent years without mothers, without fathers, without brothers, without sisters, who were sick in southern hospitals. We were completely cut off from the world. No way of communicating with our families and friends back home. The first 10 years were the most terrible years of our lives.
It will be 2 decades before most return home. But in 1956, concern over Canada's place in the world will focus not so much on the north, but much further south. Egypt has seized the Suez Canal, a shipping route crucial to Britain and France. Despite American opposition, the two countries, along with Israel, launch attacks on Egypt. Egypt's ally, the Soviet Union, threatens to use nuclear weapons. The world is on the brink of war. The United Nations calls for a ceasefire. External Affairs Minister Lester Pearson proposes another crucial step.
Of an emergency international United Nations force to secure and supervise the cessation of hostilities.
In setting up the first truly international peacekeeping force, Lester Pearson has secured Canada's independent place on the world stage. But Pearson and Canada cannot escape the grasp of the Cold War. Herbert Norman, a brilliant scholar and ambassador to Egypt, has been branded a communist by a United States Senate subcommittee. Although he has been investigated and cleared twice, the stain remains.
You can't wash off the poison of a smear from your emotions. How can you fight back against this sort of thing?
In March 1957, Washington accuses him again, this time publicly. Pearson defends his colleague and friend.
These slanders and unsupported insinuations against him contained in this USA subcommittee report we can treat with the contempt they deserve.
The American subcommittee turns on Pearson and threatens to name him as a communist sympathizer. Pearson dares them to do it. The Americans back down. It is a triumph, made all the sweeter by the announcement that Pearson has won the Nobel Peace Prize for his role in the Suez Crisis. But triumph is about to be tempered by tragedy. Believing his name will never be cleared, Herbert Norman takes an elevator to the roof of the Wedi Anil building overlooking the River Nile.
The forces against me are too formidable, even for an innocent man. And it's better to go now than to live indefinitely pelted with mud, although so much of it will be quite incorrect and false. My loved ones will regret this act, but I believe they will understand the reasons for it. In utter humility, I beg their forgiveness.
Norman's suicide stirs anti-American feelings across the country. Pearson is outraged.
The sense of shock and grief that I feel at the loss of a colleague and an old friend is made all the more bitter by the circumstances of his passing. He was the victim of persecution.
Canadians are becoming uncomfortable with their government's close relationship with a very powerful America. They are growing angry. The country is ready for change. In the mid-50s, Canadians will feel the first tremors of a coming revolution. In Quebec, nationalism will awaken from its slumber and find new champions. A whirlwind from the west will sweep the country. Saskatchewan will launch the program that will become Canada's symbol of social justice. And Canada and the whole world will hang on the brink of nuclear war. In the mid-50s, most Canadians chase the American dream. In large cities, almost all households now have television. It's the golden age of the automobile. The most popular car is the Chevrolet Bel Air. It costs less than $2,000 and gets 20 miles to the gallon.